Freedom, or the lack of it, is something which keeps getting brought up during this pandemic. Do you remember a point in the pandemic when there was talk of Freedom Day, the day when restrictions were lifted? When we think about freedom, we might think it's an absence of restrictions. The problem with a word like freedom is that if it might be taken to mean that we're able to do what we like, choose what we want, and decide for ourselves. But freedom is not the absence of restrictions. And this is actually good news. If nothing else, it means that we can still experience freedom in the midst of a pandemic, even if the restrictions remain with us. It's important that we grasp what freedom is if we're going to be involved in encouraging others to be free. Tim Keller describes this in the following way. Modern people like to see freedom as a complete absence of any constraints, he says. But think of a fish, because a fish absorbs oxygen from water, not air. It is free only if it is restricted to water. If a fish is freed from the river and put on the grass to explore, its freedom to move and soon even to live is destroyed. The fish is not more free, but less free, if it cannot honour the reality of its nature. The same is true, Tim Keller says, with airplanes and birds. If they violate the laws of aerodynamics, they will crash into the ground, but if they follow them, they will ascend and soar. The same is true in many areas of life. Freedom is not so much the absence of restrictions as finding the right ones, those that fit with the realities of our own nature and those of the world. So, freedom is not so much the absence of restrictions as finding the right ones, those that fit with the realities of our own nature and those of the world. This 63-year-old man may have a strong desire to eat fatty foods. But if I regularly exercise this freedom to give in to that desire, my life will be curtailed in some way. So I must choose to lose a lesser freedom to eat these foods I enjoy for a greater freedom, health, and long life. Now, you may want the freedoms that come with being a great musician, for example, the ability to move people with your music and to make a good living for your family. You'll have to give up your freedom to do other things in order to practice 8 hours a day for years. Freedom is not then simply the absence of restrictions, but rather consists of finding the right, liberating restrictions. You know, the night before someone gets married used to be referred to as the last night of freedom. Marriage was viewed as something which involves restrictions. But anyone who has had a long and fulfilling marriage will tell you that the sacrifices and the restrictions actually lead to greater freedom. I would say that we feel most like ourselves when we are truly loved and when we love one another. But that requires the surrender of the desire to do what we like, when we like, and with whom we like. So, freedom is not so much the absence of restrictions as finding the right ones, those that fit with the realities of our own nature and those of the world. So, can I encourage you at the beginning of this year of freedom to resist the temptation of falling into the trap of believing the modern idea of freedom and recognize it as an illusion. The absence of any constraint does not mean freedom. Do not believe the lie that the fewer limits or boundaries I have in my desires, choices, and actions, the freer I am. So, what is the route to freedom? I'm going to suggest to you today that it's found through submission. And there's two things that I would like you to submit to this year. One, submit to the right rules. Submit to the right rules. We've been so aware of rules in the past couple of years, and we have sometimes get confused about whether or not we are following the right rules. Don't live like a fish out of water. Live in a way you were meant to live, according to the Creator's instructions. God knows how we should live to experience the life that God has called us to live. God has set things up in such a way that there are rules to live by, which will create the right environment for us to grow mentally and physically and spiritually. In the Old Testament, God gave us rules like don't kill and don't steal to restrict our behaviour. Yes, but more importantly, those rules were given so that all of us could experience freedom. I think I've told you before of when we lived in the Highlands where people didn't lock their doors. It was much freer living in a place where people didn't lock up their doors because no one was going to steal. They were going to follow the rules and not steal. And because of that, there was more freedom. So much better than living somewhere where people have got cameras and their doorbells and all around their house and all the rest of it. We are not the more free for all of those things. We are free when we keep to the rules. In the New Testament, Jesus said that the greatest commandment was to love God with all our heart and all our soul and all our mind and all our strength. And the second was to love our neighbour as ourselves. And so Jesus has put it down to those two things. Love God, love one another. Those are the rules to live by. And if we all lived by those rules, the right rules, then life is going to be so much better for everyone. So this year, hunt down God's rules in your Bible. Look out for God's rules in your Bible this year and submit to them to set you on the road of freedom. So, submit to the right rules. Secondly, submit to the right leader. Who are you following? You will be following someone or something. Even if you're just a dedicated follower of fashion, as the song used to say. We often don't know who or what we are following, but we tend to give it away by the things that we make a priority or an obsession in our lives. It's something we are commonly in denial of. And don't come away with, oh, I'm my own boss, I follow no one. That's just as dangerous as following anyone or anything else. It is knowing Jesus that sets you free, because the ultimate bondage is rebellion against God, the God who has made us. And any devotion to created things, even to doing it my way, any devotion to created things at the expense of the worship of the Creator leads to enslavement, not freedom. Self-centeredness, the worship of self, deprives us of the freedom that God longs us to have. It is knowing Jesus that you will be set free. In John chapter 8, beginning at verse 31, it says, so Jesus spoke to the Judeans who had believed in him. If you remain in my word, he said, you will truly be my disciples and you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free. We are Abraham's descendants, they replied. We've never been anyone's slaves. How can you say that you become free? I'm telling you the solemn truth, Jesus replied. Everyone who commits sin is a slave of sin. The slave doesn't live in the house forever. The Son lives there forever. So you see, if the Son makes you free, you will be truly free. Can I encourage you this year to submit to the right rules and to submit to the right leader? For in doing so, you will find yourself on the road of freedom. May God bless you.